Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Hey, we are live. This is the MuseCast with it's the Dan show today.
That's right.
Yeah, Danny
Dan's
Churchill.
only.
Dan's only. That's right. No Shauna's allowed.
Sorry, Shauna. We love you, but you're not a Dan.
That's right. Sorry. So
Nothing personal.
nothing personal. No,
Right.
no. Well, hey, this is really cool. I mean, I don't know how you felt. Well, let me just ask you, how did you feel giving your first sermon at Woodland Hills Church?
I felt great. I mean, it's like I said, I grew up at Woodland, and so, in a lot of ways, it just felt like it felt like I was like performing for my family or something.
Yeah.
It's just like
Totally.
there were some nerves involved for sure. Greg, you and Greg and some of the speakers that come through, Shauna, you guys have been doing this for a while, and so I'm doing it in a certain context with younger people, and so but from what I've heard, like, y'all would be a little more intimidated to speak to a younger group of folks.
Oh,
and
totally.
It's just reversed for me, so I just feel like but yeah, it felt like hosting Saturday Night Live, and so it kind of feels like I'm on a late night show or something now. Getting interviewed by a late night show host.
Yeah, totally. Well,
do you prefer Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Fallon or
I'm
Jimmy
probably
Kimmel?
more of a Conan O'Brien guy.
Oh yeah, Conan.
So
yeah.
And I probably have a similar sense of humor as Conan also. So
I love it.
For better or for worse. So
I love it.
Well, you and I, though, are similar in that, because I've been a part of the church behind the scenes since the late 90s, early 2000s. And so, like, in 2019, when I did my first sermon, I hadn't been on stage at all. You had the advantage of being on stage and knowing what the lights are like and all of that. But like,
it is bright.
It is so bright. Yes. And so, like, but I had this feeling like it felt really special to do a sermon in front of this congregation, because it's not like, we get all these traveling people every once in a while. We'll bring somebody in from, North Carolina or whatever to speak, and they don't know us from a hole in the wall, but whereas you and I, it's like we know this community, and it's, for me at least, it really felt great to be able to give something back and to kind of play that role once. So
totally, same here. And it was, I did feel like there was a moment where I did like a little call out to see if there were some echo people in the room, and I got that response. And so there were little things like that you could do that I'm like, okay, all right, it's we know each other, this is okay.
Yeah.
And even to the folks that I don't know or haven't interacted with, we have this in common, that we are part of this church and we're connected to these messages and this way of trying to do kingdom work together. So there's some familiarity there too.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we're in this series called Unraveling Truth, and Greg kicked us off last week, and he kind of talked about the nature of deconstruction, and for him personally, he kind of shared these foundations that he always kind of lands on, that sort of form the basis for his rebuilding and reconstruction. And you kind of referred back to that in your message. But week 2 here, I thought went a really important direction that we weren't even going to do in the series. Paul, Eddie, and I kind of outlined the series. We weren't even thinking about the stuff that you thought would be a good idea to add. And we asked, we're like, we should probably find out, like, if there are things that younger people would want us to talk about. So we're like, well, let's see what Danny has to say. And like the first thing you said, you were like, well, judgmentalism and kids feel like the church is less loving than the world sometimes. And all three of us, Paul, Greg, and I, were just like, oh my goodness, yes, totally, we need that. And so that's really sort of the sermon you brought was so great, just looking at the reason why so many people reject Christianity has little to do with theology, the argument for the existence of God or any of that stuff. It's just Christians can be buttheads, and people
Totally.
will reject the faith because of how people treat them, and that's really tragic. And so that was sort of like I would say the gist of your sermon, and you shared some examples in your own family and your own life of being kind of judged at church. And you shared some really great passages about the importance of love and the centrality of love, and it's fascinating that Jesus says the world will know that you are my disciples by how you treat one another. And sure enough, if you don't treat people in a Christ-like way, they don't reject your supposed Christ message. And I just think that's really fascinating. And then you also talked about spiritual friendships, and you gave an example of somebody who has been really helpful for you and has been really supportive for you, and that's Thor, really cool guy who is a congregant, and he's helped out a lot at the church over the years. And I just thought it was just such an important message. That needs to be a part of really everything that we do in this series and all of our series. So yeah, did I miss anything big in my summary?
Summary. I like that.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's very nice. No, I don't think so. You got the gist of it, and you missed. There was like a quite a long intro of just like this is Danny's life and history here at Woodland Hills. That was probably like half the sermon. So
that was great. Well, and I was telling Mary and Greg this morning, I said, it's really cool that you did that, because, now, like when you're up there singing or playing the guitar, you're not just some guy. People know you. That's Danny now, and I think that's just so great that you did that. So that was pretty cool.
It's the only way I know how to roll is relationally. I feel like I just want to, I know it helps me to feel at ease when people share about who they are and just a little bit about their life, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things about that. One, you do a good job of it, and I feel like there's probably something I could probably do better, because I'm all about the content. I'm all about like getting the message across, and I could probably do a little bit more of that. And then the second thing is, man, I didn't really know you when you were in the boy band phase with the frosted tips. That was nice.
Oh, yep. It was a special time in my life, and I had some great influence from the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and and all my friends, were just, you'd get that plastic cap with the holes in it and just like pull some hair through, and
that's so cool. I when I was in high school, they had this product called Sun In, and you would spray it in your hair, and then that would change the color of your hair.
Oh my God.
I'm guessing I'm probably going to have a brain tumor at some point from that stuff, you might
already have.
Yeah, it might be there. You're right. Hey, well, we did get a comment on whchurch.org, and I don't know if people know this, but like every time we do a sermon, you can go on whchurch.org, and you could go to today's or this week's sermon. And when you go to the sermon page, there's a really great summary of the sermon. And then at the bottom there, you can download the audio file. You can get a study guide for the sermon. And then sometimes there's other kind of things there, like if we refer to a video or something like that. But then also you can leave comments at the bottom. And this week you already have a comment here. And Sarah thought the message was great. But I hear this a lot, Danny. People have a hard time finding spiritual friends. And I mean, some people just, because of social anxiety or because of they don't feel confident or whatever, they have a hard time finding spiritual friends. And then when you add to that, and this is one of the points that Sarah makes, when you add to that, you have like just how hostile our culture is right now, and how everybody is, taking sides on all these issues, and you just have that kind of polarization. That makes it even harder to have any type of relational roots. And I thought she raised some good questions, and wondering what you think of that. Like, do you have any like advice or any type of wisdom or guidance that you could offer Sarah as she tries to kind of develop these deeper relationships that you talked about in your sermon?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm glad you said that you hear this a lot, because the first thing I would say to Sarah is that you're not alone, and which is funny. It's kind of a funny thing to say because you feel you are alone, you feel alone, but your experience isn't unique, because a lot of people have this feeling and this experience, and I'm one of those people that like a pastor at this church. Like, you would think that I wouldn't struggle to make strong friendships and connections with people. But it is at least I know for sure at our church, in Minnesota, I think in general, I've heard that. I don't know if it's a Minnesota thing, or maybe this is just like a universal thing that goes beyond this particular place that you are. It might be bigger than that. But yeah, I've heard from lots of people that they struggle with friendship in general, but then take it to the level of like spiritual friendship, and that feels like it's even more difficult to grasp and to actually get a hold of. And so I know for sure that was like the case for me. It's hard too, like telling that story about Thor. It's like I feel so fortunate and I feel lucky. I got a phone call. It kind of fell into my lap in that way. But I was praying and asking God to help, because I felt lonely. I felt like I had tried a handful of different pathways. Like, oh, I met a person, and I'll reach out and see if this goes anywhere. And like, oh yeah, we're getting somewhere. And then, oh no, it didn't work out. And there's all kinds of variables in relationships that, can make or break what you're looking for. I know I had like close friends that I grew up with that, I would I had identified like, well, these are my best friends because they're the people that you have the most history with, right? But Thor actually helped me to understand that just because I have a lot of history with a person doesn't mean that we are best friends. Yeah. And so like some of the things that I was after in spiritual friendship, I think I've been trying to get from like long standing relationships, but it just wasn't what those friendships were about. And so I was like trying to push something into those relationships that it just wasn't what everybody wanted. Yeah. And so I do think that's part of the advice I would give is like, pray, like, God is involved in our relationships and wants to be like involved in the process with you. So inviting God into that to say like, God, just help me to be able to identify, be connected to a person that I could have this kind of a relationship with. And then I think it's kind of weird, but you kind of set it up at the beginning to say like, hey, here's what I want from this friendship. Is this what you want? So there's kind of like a formality to it. It's not, I think I, again, had to learn that the hard way, that you can't just, it doesn't usually happen that it just casually kind of turns into that kind of a thing. You have to have some direct conversation, and sometimes even like Dan, for like you and I, even we're spiritual friends, right? And so it's not like we were just like, hey, you're cool and like I like you and let's start hanging out. It was like, hey, we're doing this spiritual friendship thing. And like, we kind of got like paired together even. And we're
Yeah.
like, well, okay, let's give this a try. And so now like you and I will try to like connect every once in a while and
Yeah.
just grab coffee and talk about life and try to
Yep.
be connected in that way. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's a weird thing because I do think that the spiritual connections are so important. And it's, and life is just so busy and chaotic. And I even, when you're talking on Sunday, like I'm watching this thinking, ah, man, Danny and we need to get together more.
well, are you still in Florida?
I am still in Florida. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, see,
Yeah.
so you're giving me an opportunity to practice non-judgment towards you right
That's right.
now.
Yes. That's
So I'm
right.
just gonna I'm
Yes.
gonna dig deep right now and just because I think it was like hailing outside a second ago. So
Oh no.
I'm just gonna dig deep and not judge you, my brother.
That's funny.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, we gotta hang out soon.
Yeah,
And this is
and I
a
think yeah, well, you could come down and join us for a couple days. We got a
ooh,
couch,
okay.
so
All right, all right.
hey, I love what you said though, and I think that we over the last couple few years we've really looked at the importance of spiritual friendship and we've given more attention to it, and I think that that's going to be something that as a church body we continue to give attention to because if you can get those connections that can be really helpful. And so on one hand, we want to focus on that, but on the other hand, it's not salvation. We have to like manage people's expectations a lot of times. Like some of the relationships that I've had that have been like most meaningful to me have not been like fun. It hasn't been like and likewise some of the friendships that I've had that have been really fun haven't really helped me all that much and haven't really met my
Right.
spiritual needs that much. And so people, you have to just kind of try to control expectations as you look for these spiritual connections. And this kind of goes back to what you're saying is one of the reasons why we judge other people is because we bring expectations and we judge whether or not this person is meeting our expectations. And so as you're looking for spiritual friendships, try not to have any expectations and just accept and get the most out of each relationship that you have.
Totally. Like,
And
yeah, there's a difference between hopes and expectations.
yeah,
You should go into friendship and relationships with hopes and dreams
yeah,
for what that could be. But yeah, you're totally right to expect that it's going to be a certain kind of way. You're basically if you go in with expectations, then you can expect to be disappointed.
that's right.
Because
Yeah,
people, it's just people. Like
yeah,
they're not going to meet all of your expectations.
that's right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was great, Sarah. I hope that was helpful at all. It was helpful for me, so I enjoyed, Danny, your response to that. We have a couple things that we do after a sermon. We first of all want to ask: is there anything, and if the answer is no, that's okay. But is there anything like that you wanted to talk about, but you had to cut out because of time, or is there anything important that if you
Yeah.
had another opportunity, you would talk about?
Yeah. Well, I would say when you're putting together a sermon, this, it's like you want to like, you have to trim a lot of stuff out. Because there's always a whole bunch of things that you want to say, and you're putting things in a certain kind of order so that it flows nicely. One thing flows into the next thing. And so I guess like that for sure there are elements of like what I talked about. I think anytime I have a lesson, I usually will talk about it with a bunch of people leading up to that, like giving the lesson, because I feel like that's kind of how I process the content. And that's at least for me how I'm an outward processor. So
Yeah,
I like to talk with people and have conversations, and that's honestly like how I think transformation happens for me a lot of the time, is just through conversation and relationship. My wife and I are talkers, so we'll just we'll
That's
stay up,
awesome.
after the kids are in bed, we'll just sit up talking for hours. And
Hmm.
we have some friends that are like, how do you guys talk so much? What is that? I was like, we just love to talk. So, but I think one of the things that like I had to rearrange my sermon kind of late in the game. I didn't have
Yeah.
to, I chose to. Um, because I got some really helpful feedback from you and Greg and Paul, just your wisdom, and I felt like it was really helpful. But I I think I kind of ended with that story of Thor, and I realized that I hadn't really had time to sort of figure out how I was gonna end things from there. And so I felt like I kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. Like I talked
Yeah.
about spiritual friendship, um, but I think in the end, the reason I told that story about Thor is because um, I really feel like that's the church, Christians need to lean into um, having giving people an experience of Christianity and the church, even if that's like Christian to Christian or Christian to non-Christian. We need to be helping people have experiences that leave them feeling like filled and like full of like curiosity and joy and wonder and uh like interest,
Yeah.
and not so I think that was part of the reason I shared that story was, yes, like let's get spiritual friends, and that's important, and let's try to figure that out, but also just like I feel like so much would be solved if we spent more time as Christians trying to think about how we could make another person's day awesome.
Yeah.
If we
Yep.
if we could do that instead of, I mean, because theology is important, like figuring out what we believe and
Right.
what's right and wrong. Those things are important. Um, but I think I've what I'm seeing is that like focusing on those things can sometimes lead you to just this place of like feeling like you have the high ground
Right.
morally, um because you want to be in, you don't want to be out, and so you want to be right, you don't want to be wrong, and we just start, instead of like separating the ideas and the theology, we end up separating people, and so instead of giving people this like we're leaving people with this like really bad taste in their mouth. um I feel like we just could focus more on like surprising people with beauty and joy and kindness and friendship. And I
Hmm.
know that sounds really kind of like general and like,
Yeah.
is that really what the gospel is all about? Is just being nice? But because I obviously I think it's about way more than that. But
Yeah.
I just am like, man, that's what people need.
Yeah.
That's what people need. What I'm seeing is people need to see that Christians aren't just all about the rules and the rituals and all these. And I think those things are awesome, but
Yeah.
Christians are also like trying to like bless people and help people
Yeah.
and be like Jesus, like sacrifice your comfort and
Yep.
we all got stuff going on in our lives. We're all busy, right? But like try to sacrifice some of that to think about another person and make their day. And
Yeah.
that's gonna, I think that's gonna attract people. Um,
Yeah.
because that's part of our calling, right? Is to like I think I may have said it in the lesson, but to be like to be a light on a hill. When every time I think of that image, I think it's just like you're just I imagine myself out in the darkness and seeing this light and being like,
Yeah.
I just want to go there. I'm drawn to it. And I think so often, man, it's like we draw people in, and then it's almost like it's not on purpose often, but like people just get hurt. people get hurt by the church, and then I don't know. We just
I
got to
think
do
what I
something
like
about
about what you're saying there is that I feel like one of the things that I see a lot is this it's sort of a Yelp attitude about church where, you know, people are assessing the church as a product and saying, no, it doesn't meet this expectation, doesn't meet this expectation, and then they're gone. And you know, sometimes if you're in an abusive church, you should turn and go the other way for sure. But
Totally.
you know, you got to take care of yourself. But at the same time, there is something very kind of twisted about that spirit, because, you know, if you want a church that has more joy, that has more hospitality, that is more welcoming, and if you sense that this church is lacking these things, you're probably right. But that's also an opportunity for you to fill that gap. And that's part of what I loved about your Thor story, is that, you know, you told it from your perspective about somebody who had been praying for a connection like this. I was thinking of it from Thor's perspective. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to be proactive and reach out to somebody and have that connection. And that is a gift. That is what it means to serve. That's what it means to give oneself. And we need more of that, because we have so many people who are hungry for those types of connections and hospitalities and so forth. And so I love it. And I think kind of showing both sides of that, I think is really important. So
yeah. The other thing I would say is, you know, I told that story about the church that my family went to before Woodland, and, you know, my mom was I called it rebelling, but you know, she was doing things that were out of step with this church, cutting her hair, wearing pants, and asking questions about the theology of the church, um and that those things just weren't acceptable. And so, like, churches have these like cultures, right? Um and for that church culture, that wasn't the way they were doing things, and so they responded in the way they responded. It was painful and hurtful. I talked to my dad last night. He called me up to say, like, hey, we watched the sermon, great job. And he told me, you know, that he was crying listening to that, because he didn't know I was going to tell that story. My mom did, but he didn't know. And, you know, my grandma has passed away a few years ago. And so he was feeling kind of emotional hearing about my grandma and the story, and just remembering how painful that whole thing was. But he also said it was like good to remember. But when I think about that story, that church later, like, they issued apologies in a newspaper to people.
Wow.
Like they were like, we were wrong. They basically said, we were wrong. We're sorry.
Wow. Good for them.
So it's so good for them. And so the point of that story wasn't like to demonize that church specifically, or churches in general or whatever. To me, every time I think about that story, it makes me think, what at Woodland Hills are those things that we've picked up, that we use to judge people, and we're not aware of, like, what are the things that, like, my grandkids are going to say about Woodland Hills and how horrible we did it, you know? I just, like, it makes me just, it motivates me to want to try to ask that question of, like, what is the plank in my eye? What is the plank in Woodland Hills eye? Because I'm sure we are not perfect. I'm sure we're doing some stuff that's not the best. I'm grateful for the awareness that we have of certain things, and that we do welcome questions at our church and things like that. But it makes you wonder, like, where are we missing it? And because nobody wants to hurt anybody. No. I think deep down, I don't think people really.
I think that's right. Well, and even that church that you were, referring to, that your family was a part of, I mean, their intentions were good, but a lot of times that, the devil uses good intentions just as much as bad intentions. So
it's really true.
Yeah. Well, that is a good place to end the MuseCast on. Thank you so much for doing the sermon and for joining here today. I was so excited, because I'd been through that where, doing your first sermon for Woodland Hills, and for me it was a cool thing, and I was kind of vicariously re-experiencing that as you were up there, and you did a great job. So
Thanks so much, Dan, and yeah, thanks for the encouragement all the way through, and it was really fun. I'm sure I'll give it a swing again another time.
Good.
And thanks for having me on the MuseCast. Next time I'll have to come on when Shauna's around too.
Yeah, definitely.
Or we could start a different show called Dan's Only.
Dan's Only, the Dudes Cast, maybe something like that.
Dan Cast. Yeah, I like it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So usually Shauna brings the giggles here, but we got a few giggles in, so it was good.
I'm always giggling. That's my thing.
Cool, man.
All right. Peace, y'all.